You're back at the Faculty Factory Podcast, and I'm Kim Skarupski at the University of Texas Medical Branch in sunny Galveston, Texas, looking at my new friend and colleague, Dr. Vicki Freeman. She has all the letters, starting with the PhD and all the other ones in the alphabet soup, but who is she? Dr. Vicki Freeman is a professor emeritus and former chair, tenured chair, in the UTMB Department of Clinical Laboratory Sciences. She's also the former Associate Dean for Faculty Development for the School of Health Professions. She was a UT Distinguished Professor and a former Minnie Stephens Piper Professor. She worked on many PEPFAR-funded initiatives in resource-limited countries to train laboratory personnel and develop curricular materials. Her teaching areas of interest include evidence-based laboratory medicine, clinical chemistry, CLS education, global health, research and evidence-based laboratory medicine, diabetes, educational outcomes, curriculum reform, and did I also mention she was the director of the renowned UTMB Academy of Master Teachers? She served as the interim dean for the School of Health Professions. And we're going to stop there because it just goes on and on and on. And she is here today. Here in the Office of Faculty Affairs at UTMB, we had the month-long series entitled Advanced Careers in Aging, LLC. And the LLC is not what you think it is Life Leadership Collaborative. And Dr. Freeman served on a panel we had with recent retirees or faculty members who are well along the way of retiring, thinking about retiring, partly retired. So she shared her wisdom experiences with the crowd and they loved it. And so she's kind enough to be back here today to share her journey. So all that. Thanks again, Vicki, for being here. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. It was a great story you told us. So why don't we start with you telling everyone in Faculty Factory podcast land how you decided to retire and what did you do to prepare?
Well, thanks, Kim. Thank you for inviting me to do this. It was a hard decision because, I'd worked for so many years and really enjoyed the job that I was doing. But as I looked at it, I realized that I was heading towards an age of 70, which seemed to be a good time to decide to do something else. But what really precipitated it was that my family moved away from the Houston, Galveston area to South Central Texas. And I wanted to be closer to the grandkids too. And I wanted to be able to be somewhat involved in their lives. And that travel from Galveston to New Braunfels was just a trip that was taking longer and longer. So we started looking in 2019 to build a house in the New Braunfels area. And we put a contract down and we started building the house. And then guess what happened? COVID hit, right? And so it was really a hard time to make that decision to move. But I really felt like it was time to let the younger generation sort of take leadership roles. And I really had worked very hard with the department to mentor many of the faculty members into roles that I thought that they could fulfill. And so I felt the department was at a pretty good spot for me to move forward, except for this little nasty COVID-19 thing that we had going on. And so it was just hard for me to walk away during that time. So I looked into doing phased retirement, and the phased retirement, the program that I saw at UTMB didn't quite work out, but I did work out with the dean of the school to allow me to go to 75% and to move to New Braunfels in 2020 and step down from my chair position and let somebody take over that, but continue doing faculty development and to continue teaching online, which during COVID, that's what we were doing anyway. And so that worked out. That actually worked out pretty well for me. And then at the end of 2 years, then I decided that that was the time to go ahead and complete the retirement. The other thing was I had a couple of programs that we had started that needed to get accreditation done on them, completed. And I also wanted to sort of feel like I closed those boxes as well to get that done with the department. So it was sort of a phased way that I went into retirement, and I actually think that worked out pretty good for me that way.
Yeah. So this age 70, you started with that. That sounds like a nice whole number. And I'm curious if you had in your, when you're 45, 50, 55, are you a whole number kind of person going at this age, I'm going to do this, by this age, I'm going to do that? Was it something that was on your radar, say, 5 years, 10 years prior? We have the luxury in academic health to have no mandatory retirement.
Right.
And thank, the Lord, many of our, our brain is, if our brain's intact, we've not been doing hard physical labor. So we can work into our later years. I'm curious around what time you and your family started talking about, well, I don't know, when's this going to happen, Mom? Are you just going to do this indefinitely? Are you going to, how did that come about with that
That's a
decision?
good question, and I'm not sure I have an answer to that. I just at 50 or 60, I didn't really feel prepared to do that. And as we got, my husband had already basically retired, and it just 70 felt like a good number for me for some reason. I can't tell you that at 60, I thought I'd go to 70 or 65 or whatever. I do know that in a previous position I was at in Nebraska, the person who was above me, she held off retiring for a while, and it sort of made me want to move on because I felt like I could take on more leadership role, and I felt like she was holding me back. And so I guess that was another thing that I looked at is, am I holding back some of the younger generation that's ready to move forward with leadership roles? I didn't want them to leave UTMB. I wanted them to be able to stay and to be able to grow and progress. So there was a little bit of a balance there, if that makes sense to you, of when's a good time, what programs are we working on, and do I have people in place that could go ahead and take on those roles?
Well, good for you. I love that generosity and that outward focus rather than being me, me, me. So I think so many faculty that I coach and trying to growing into leadership positions find ourselves, because we're good at something, being voluntold and applying for numerous leadership roles and wear many, many hats. And we end up amassing all of these projects and programs and grants and courses and things and things and things. And we feel like we can't let them go. We feel like, well, they're definitely going to be doomed for failure. Only I can do this. So could you give us a little bit of an insight into your process for letting go in terms of having someone lined up for succession planning? Was this something where do you have a memory of faculty coming to you saying, geez, Dr. Freeman, I've noticed that if there's ever opportunity for me to, I'm wondering if you're aware of, was it that other faculty members being proactive and kind of inquiring with you that kind of made you think, huh? Or was it you saying, I see, I'm going to give that to Kim. Kim would be great at that. Or was it both? Like, how did the succession planning happen?
In general, I'm going to say that I look for people's strengths. And I say, what roles do I think that they're going to be able to fill? Even in hiring people, even though I needed some specific expertise, lots of times I could groom that expertise into individuals. I would look for somebody that would fit in the position and that could grow in the position. So I think that I had people wanting leadership roles and I would work with them on that. But I can't say that anyone specifically came to me and said, oh, I really want to take on this leadership role. I would say it was more me encouraging them to take it on. We did have ongoing grant in the department, and I basically turned that grant leadership over to someone else as I was moving towards that retirement to do that. And it was hard for me to do that because I'd always handled the grants before, but I think that was good for me to do that. The chair position, I had been grooming somebody for a while to do that, and that person was really quite ready to take it on, I felt like. After I left, were there some challenges? I think there were some challenges, as there's going to be with a new person taking over the reins and maybe coming up from the ranks, and other people sort of not sure that, that was the right thing or whatever. But I think in the long run, it worked out just fine because they did have leadership roles that they could all fulfill. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers your question or
Yeah.
not.
No, it does. And what I think that you said was so important to me that kind of lit up in my brain is that you said nobody really, you don't recall anybody coming up to you, a faculty member particularly, and saying, "Hey, Dr. Freeman, if you ever get tired of something, something, I'm your person." And you also said earlier in Nebraska, a former institution, you um, felt like you were hungry for more responsibility, more challenges, and those doors, or you were at the ceiling there. So that to me raises awareness that, gosh, there's an interesting dynamic here, almost a kind of maybe a similarity to the hidden curriculum, or like the hidden politics, or things that are not said, or things that are left unsaid, just because someone or ones are not putting their hand up and saying, "Hey, I just happened to notice that all y'all leaders have about 18 things that you're doing. If you ever want to think about somebody else doing that, I'd be happy, or some of us would be happy of letting that go." Just because that's not been said doesn't mean it's behind other doors being discussed. And I think we have to like elevate that succession planning and being strategic and just being really open about it. Maybe at annual reviews, maybe with leadership going, "Hey, we're doing great, and this is not meant to be like critical, but who's next? How can we give opportunity?" So I like how you juxtapose your personal experience of saying, "I'm hungry, I want more," and yet on the flip side, you didn't have that experience. So maybe that's an opportunity for us to, again, kind of uncover those needs and desires that are bi-directional. I would like to retire, but no one's stepping up to the plate. Well, maybe
Right.
you not, put that out there.
Maybe you're not giving them the opportunity to step up to the plate. Absolutely. I mean, back in Nebraska, we had been writing grants, but I was never able to be the PI because the other person was always the PI. And so, that was another piece is, yeah, I got involved in writing some grants, but I didn't really get to be the leadership of the grants. And that was another piece that was important to me when I came to
Yeah.
UTMB.
That's a great leadership lesson you just dropped on us as an aside in terms of how you decided to retire. But all right, so we have you to the point now where all these, confluence of things happening in life, and you're serving as the interim dean, and you're doing all these big things, and decide, okay, that's it. And then COVID. Well, what are you currently doing since that 2 year? It sounds like you were 2 years in that phased retirement kind of situation. What are you doing now?
Well, people say I didn't retire correct. All right. They say I did not retire right because I'm currently professionally working. I'm chair of our National Board of Certification for the clinical laboratory professionals. So I'm still involved with that. I've got basically about 6 months left as chair and then a year as past chair left in that position. But I've also stayed involved in writing textbooks and study guides for the profession. I've been involved in faculty development still. I, I not just at UTMB, but faculty in other institutions as well. And I serve as advisor on some of the professional committees, so I'm still really involved professionally. One of my passions was to get a doctorate in clinical laboratory sciences program going, which we did at UTMB. We're one of only now 4 programs in the country, and we're the only program that's accredited, which I think is really fantastic. But I'm working both with professional organizations to get an exam committee, so we'll have a board certification for that. So I'm still working with that, and I'm also working with another committee for the advancement of the DCLS. So I'm still involved professionally, I guess, with things. So that's why people say I didn't quite retire correctly, because I haven't sort of stopped doing that. The other thing I've done to stay involved sort of professionally is, and I've worked with students, is some of our DCLS students I've taken on clinical rotations to Kenya. So we had an international rotation going for students there. So I continue to sort of stay involved with students. I give one whole lecture a year to students right now, but I get invited back to give a lecture, so I still do that. Um, and we're also leading mission teams to Kenya as well as the student teams that we're leading. We've been leading mission teams where we do medical camps and some other projects there too. So, that's why people say I didn't retire right, because I'm still pretty professionally involved with things as well. But I have started to branch out from that. So my mother-in-law and her mother had both been doing a lot of genealogy, and I expected to turn that genealogy stuff over to my daughter, but she just doesn't have time to do it right now. And so guess who got it all? Me. So I've taken my research skills that I developed at UTMB
Mhm.
and I put them into practice and doing genealogy. And I'm really enjoying that. I'm enjoying getting into the genealogy, researching my side of the family, since that side hasn't really been fleshed out all that much. And so, I mean, I guess that's how I'm sort of
Mhm.
keeping going with that. I mean, I'm doing a lot of other things, but that's how I sort of right now, my purpose in life, I guess, is where I'm investing a lot of my time.
Well, the whole retire right, is there a right way? It sounds
I
to
don't know.
me like you're still engaged professionally, but you've chosen to do the things you want to do
That's
versus
true.
administrivia, all that administrivia stuff. I'm sure you don't miss committee meetings and filing reports and paperwork and disputes and grievances and all the hiring and the all the stuff that has to do that the things that we're always like pulling our hair out. So in terms of is there a right way to retire, you've just described to me a life that is purposeful, doing the things that you love to do.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And
Although I will tell you, I'm ready to step back from some of those. So
why? Why?
why? Well, I think I'd like to step back from some of the positions. There is still some politics involved with some of them, some of the professional stuff. And I'm just not interested in putting up with the politics anymore. Isn't that an interesting way to think about it? It's just I want to enjoy what I do. And when
Mhm.
the politics start getting involved, I don't feel like this
Check
isn't
out.
enjoyable. Yeah,
That's good for you. That's I think the luxury of being at the stage of your life and the stage of your career is that you're not obligated.
right.
You're not on the salary, you're not employed by someone, you don't have a contract. So when something ceases to delight you, you can check out. And that's the beauty and the power of that freedom. And I also like how you mentioned that the genealogy is employing and parlaying your strengths as a researcher. That's something you remember from the panel conversation we had. Gosh, was that Oscar Skip Brown saying, you have to remember you have a lot, we all have valuable skills that we sometimes don't think are translatable in the real world. But the real world folks tend to think of us as these ivory tower eggheads, which we are. And I'm a proud, um, nerd, card carrying nerd, I guess I should say. And in the community and organizations and nonprofits and business and local governments, we have really some vital, valuable skills for critical thinking and doing research and methodical, careful examination of data and teaching and providing care. So all those kind of sensibilities and skills and talents can be employed across a wide spectrum of avocations and participation in community. So I like how you kind of saw that, hey, that genealogy kind of makes sense. This is kind of my bread and butter.
Yeah, I can go out and research the internet and find all kinds of information out there and pull it all in together. And it also involves deciding what is the correct information, because you've got to watch it, because not everything out there is right and it doesn't always fit. So, it does. It employs a lot of your skills that you've had before.
Yeah.
And now I'm sort of working on writing a book. I'm trying to put it into a book format so the family could have it down the line too. So
Nice. Enduring legacy. I love that. So, Vicki, where have you found your network, your social support? I mean, you've described a lot of obviously maintaining involvement in your professional society. So, surely you had national and international recognition, and so people knew you and know you that way. So, those are, I imagine, you still have your people, you have your community, your tribe. And as you are thinking about transitioning away from the professional side of engagement, where do you anticipate finding your people?
Well, we've really become involved in the church here, all right? So I think that's one thing is when you move to a new area, you really have to find where you can find support in that area. And so we've gotten involved in some of the church activities. I've started a little nature gardening group at the church, and that sort of led me to become involved with the Native Plant Society of Texas. There's a couple of chapters really close to where we're at, so we go to both of those chapters. And I took a certification program for native landscaping, level one. There's 4 levels, so we'll see how far I go on that. But you're right. You can sort of pick what you want to do with that. There's a lot of social things that we could be involved with at the church or in our community here. It's just sort of the timing and how much time I have to do it. The other thing I've become a little bit involved with, but I haven't taken on much of a role yet, is the Daughters of the American Revolution, because I was able to trace my side back to the DAR. And so got a little bit involved with that. And I think there's a lot more things I could do with that group as well. So I think it's finding your interest of what you'd
Mhm.
like to do.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, there's so many community resources. We moved into an area here that has a bunch of small groups we could belong to if we wanted to. The church activities has a bunch of small groups we could be involved with, just sort of picking and choosing and saying how much time do I have to devote to it, and how much do I want to use my leadership skills, and how much do I would just want to be a participant. I
Ah,
think it's a little choice there.
that's an interesting idea. You don't have to be full throttle leading every church committee, every community group, every volunteer activity just because you come from a place in your life where you were the leader. It is a relief to be able to say, I'm just going to be one of the group. I'm happy to be the follower and just do whatever I can do to support the team, but I have no interest in writing the bylaws or coming up
That's
with
right.
the fundraising campaign.
Absolutely. That's right.
Well, so do you, Vicki, as you know, as you've been experiencing your retirement so far, or anticipate going forward, do you find yourself missing your UTMB life?
I miss some of the people, and I get to see them and sometimes get together with them. Like when we did the panel, I came down there and I got together with some people. I would like to have had a little more time to have gotten together with others that I just didn't have time for. So I miss the people. And I miss the community that I had there. So I would say yes, I miss that. And I think if we hadn't moved to New Braunfels, I would have been able to be more engaged. But that distance, which you'd laugh, is what, 4 hours or something, maybe.
That's
Shouldn't
not
be
insignificant. No, that's
shouldn't
tough.
be that significant, but it is. So I'm not as engaged as I would be with it. But um, I there's some pieces I miss, but I think we found a pretty good life here as well.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to pros and cons. Someone may be thinking about this, going, I don't know, in retrospect or armchair quarterbacking this, what are some of your high level pros and cons of retiring?
Well, I might talk a little bit, if I could, about some hard lessons because I think
Sure.
it leads into my pros and cons a little bit.
Perfect.
One of the things that happened that when we moved, I think that was hard for us because we moved to a new community. So I think that might be sort of a con to think about is if you're moving into a new community, you need to realize that you're going to have to make new connections. I mean, I lived in the UTMB area, Houston Galveston area for longer than I'd lived any place in my entire life and 24 years there. And so that was a long time. And so, I was so used to that it was really hard to make that move. And particularly when we made it during COVID, because
Mm.
everything was locked down and anything that you did do was all on Zoom. So I think that made it hard. But something that was helpful for me is that I was a military spouse for 20 years. My husband was in the Air Force. And so we moved around quite a bit then. And so I think I'd gotten a little bit used to moving to new communities and knew a little bit how to get involved. So that helped me somewhat with it. We had lived in England for a couple of years and I had to make a community there because I didn't work when I was in England. And so, you learn as a military spouse that you're going to be moving around and how to get involved in some activities. So I think that helps a lot. So those are a couple of things that I think that I would like to say. A hard lesson would be that maybe moving to a new community that you've never been in before may be hard for people if they
Mhm.
don't know how to get involved. So the
Well,
last, oh,
also,
go ahead.
could I just pause there for a minute?
Sure.
So maybe someone, let's, yeah, get into that. So, if someone is thinking, yes, I'm going to retire and I'm going to move to be closer to my sister or my grandkids or my son and or just my buddies from high school, what would you suggest to them? Like, how would they, do you say don't do it? Or would you say do a sabbatical, go there, do a verbo, or like, how would you help someone ease that transition? Or what would you say to them if they want to do it?
Well, I might say if they've not been used to doing that before, moving into a new community, it might be good to do a trial. Might be good to go because one thing, I mean, we moved to be closer to the family, but the family's busy. I mean, we one of the pros of moving closer was that I could be involved in the granddaughters. I could go see their dance performances or the theater performances, or go to birthdays with them and be a lot closer to do that. So that was a pro. But they're not available on a day-to-day basis. I mean, our granddaughters are now 17 and 19. They're busy, they're not available that much, and both the daughter and son-in-law are both working, right? So you can't count that the family's going to be your whole support network. You've got to develop others. So that's the thing that people have to, I think, watch out for if they move to a new community.
Vicki, you are so right. That's so well said. My dear friend moved from Baltimore to out near south of San Francisco with the expectation. She said, Kim, when we moved out here, had it in my head that we're going to have big Sunday family dinners and Kit's daughter and son and their kids would be here and we'd be spending hours eating meals together and we'd be hanging out. And she said, they're all so busy. We rarely see them. And it was heartbreaking that we maybe have this magical thinking or have these delusions of grandeur, like, oh, won't it be courier knives that we'll sit around and bake cookies together. She's like, everybody's going 100 miles an hour and we're lucky if we could just have a drive by and throw some food out their car window at us
Yeah.
and wave and give them a kiss, hug, and that's it. So you're so right to point out that we have to be realistic, and I like how you suggest trial run it.
See how that's going to work.
Yeah.
I think another thing to think about is continue to maintain contacts and interests that you've had in the past. So, don't give up some of the professional contacts or even the contacts at UTMB or whatever. But also don't be locked into just them. Sort of keep a door open to moving forward to, some new experiences. Look for new experiences that you might be interested in. And I already mentioned community resources, libraries, local interest groups, whatever. There's all kinds of groups you can be involved with. So those would be some things that I would, maybe think about as sort of pros and cons with that. Some pros, another pro I might think about is that we've been able to travel a lot.
Right.
We went to Australia, New Zealand for 3 weeks a year ago. Last year we went to Egypt. We just got back from a 2-week trip in France, in southern France, and we're going to Greenland and the Arctic Circle next week, and to
Whoa.
Italy in September.
Oh, and I'll
So,
bet you during all those vacations, were you checking your email incessantly?
no. In fact, my email had all my junk email had piled up on me when I got home.
Can
But
you
on
imagine?
most of those, I don't usually even take my computer. I did take it this last time mainly because I was going to work on some genealogy stuff on the long trip. But I didn't. I don't have to worry
Wow.
about work stuff. Where it used to be when I travel, my computer went with me. I was on email all the time.
Correct. I can't imagine. That's like freeing up the equivalent of a part-time job. Just the
That's
stress, the
right.
constant stress of emails, emails, emails. That's fantastic. I think somebody had once, oh, I remember who it was. It was my friend from Hopkins, Barbara Fibush, said when we interviewed her on our panel there about retirement, and we were talking about getting engaged in the community and sense of identity. Who am I? When you go out in public and can no longer say, oh, well, I'm the interim dean of the School of Health Professions, or I'm a surgeon at UTMB, or I'm a professor at Hopkins. When you no longer say that, or instead think I used to be. And Barbara said to the audience, she's like, people don't care.
That's right.
People don't care what you did, where you work. She said, we have to get over ourselves that we're all just people. We all have lives and tragedies and triumphs and joys and sorrows. Nobody when you meet out in the world after retire really gives a hoot about your awards and your grants and your papers. And if you're one of those people, they'll start rolling their eyes because they're like, who the heck do you think you are? So that's freeing in a way that you can just be you and like, who do I want to be? If you let go of what I am, now I can be what I might be. And that is somebody who likes to, I don't know, do ceramics or paint or write a book or
Right.
so I like that kind of sensibility that it's so freeing to reinvent at this stage. So any pearls of wisdom as we kind of close up or what you would do differently? I mean, you kind of talked about some hard lessons and recommendations, and this is a lot of great stuff here, Vicki, but how would you kind of like to close up our conversation today?
One thing is don't move during a pandemic. Probably not the
Okay,
best time to move. But anyway, hopefully
noted.
we won't have another pandemic. Continue to stay busy with whatever work you find fulfilling. But also give yourself some downtime. We look for interest things we want to do, new things or whatever. But I also try to have downtime when I can just sit and relax more, maybe read a book or whatever. Another thing is, I think it's easy to just let the day flow away, but we sort of maintain a little bit of a daily schedule, sort of like when we're going to get up and when we're going to go to bed at night or whatever. I think having a bit of a schedule keeps you a little bit more on track. But we don't have to schedule meeting 8 o'clock, nine
Yeah.
o'clock, 10 o'clock, lunch, whatever. We can be a little more flexible than that. But I do think otherwise, I think you'll lose yourself if you don't sort of have a little bit of a schedule. So a daily routine. A funny daily routine that we do every morning is I print out the morning Sudoku and we do Sudoku over breakfast every morning. Keeps your mind engaged and everything. And I think it's a good sort of a nice little routine that we do.
Yeah. All right. Anything else, Vicki?
I think the only thing I might say is, I always wondered if I should have retired earlier, but it just seemed like, you know, it wasn't the right time. And something people always told me you sort of know when it was the right time. And I think they're right. You just sort of there's just something about it as you're working and doing things and everything. It just sort of says, and it goes back in your mind. I think I'm ready to give up this. I think I'm ready to move on to do something a little bit different. And I guess I don't know how you make that decision and how that comes up, but I think it sort of happens there with it. And it may be pressures of the family or the job or the fact you want to do some other things you just don't have time for. But I think that's one thing that might be a way for people to think about it as well.
Listening to that inner voice and trusting it and
Yep, and
being
trusting it. Yep,
quiet enough to hear the voice
yep,
and
that's right.
slowing down.
Yep.
Dr. Vicki Freeman, this has been wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being on the Faculty Factory podcast. We are an international community of faculty development leaders and faculty around the world in academic health, and we so appreciate all your kindness and generosity in sharing your story with us. Thanks, Vicki.
Well, thank you very much, Kim. I hope that this is helpful to others.
Thanks for tuning in to the Faculty Factory podcast. We are a faculty development community sharing tools to build academic leaders in healthcare. Maybe you want to be interviewed on the podcast? Please visit facultyfactory.org/contact and send me a message there. The Faculty Factory podcast and website is sponsored by the Office of Faculty Affairs. at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas.